It's somewhat a societal assumption or sort of ritual about abduction, right? So even in normal marriages, there's sort of like a little game that is played where the woman sort of runs off and the man has to go and capture her. But actually, what normally happens in a normal marriage is that there would be a contract, and the husband has to pay the bride price or work for his in-laws for a certain number of years, right? And this is actually what Temujin was supposed to do when he got his wife, and he did not do this. He did not complete the role. So what actually happens is that the poorer people end up doing this actual abduction of women. So you have Temujin's father, Yasuge. He abducts his wife, Temujin's mother, and Temujin himself abducts his wife, Börte. So there's this sort of it's this kind of societal ritual, but in some cases of poverty, they actually do end up abducting women. And then you get these repercussions, right? In that the societies from the people groups from whom they did abduct them end up taking revenge and taking women back and things like that.
Like a blood feud.
Exactly. So
okay, just a second. If we just stop here for a little bit. So was it a kind of ritual that was agreed upon before this bride kidnapping, or was it actual kidnapping?
Well, that's what I'm saying.
I watched a documentary, if you can call it that, from Vice about bride kidnapping in Kyrgyzstan today.
There is clearly a ritualized element to it, and it's though some of the way that we have rituals around weddings too, right? I mean, we still use phrases, like you give this woman, it's a little bit ritualized, even though those things no longer have the same meaning.
Right.
And so this is a moment where there is this ritual. However, there is also real kidnapping. So you have the example of Temujin's mother, Hö'elün, who in The Secret History is portrayed as really devastated by being taken away from her original husband, who was a man named Çilger of the Merkit. And she sings this or recites this poem about how, she's devastated to be losing him, and, he should remember the smell of her shirt and things like that. So it's a really evocative image of loss, and it's really interesting that it's also that is included in the Secret History, which definitely is on the side of Temujin and his father, but they still include this really powerful image of her losing her original husband, and then Yasuge, Temujin's father, taking her, and so
which probably means it really happened, right? Because otherwise they wouldn't include.
Well, and then the Merkit respond later in Temujin's life. They come and they take Börte, Temujin's wife, as revenge, and so this causes this feud between the two, and doesn't end until the Mongols defeat and destroy the Merkit royal house. So really, there's this is created from that. And so in the ideal situation, this would be avoided by exactly having a bride price, having a contract, having this the husband work for the family of the in-laws. But in the cases of this sort of up and coming society, they have to fight a little bit more for their status, and this is when they end up capturing women. And the capturing of women goes on, right? That doesn't stop. So you have to see it from that perspective.
So Temujin's mother was already married to another man, and
Yes.
yet she was still kidnapped by Temujin's father. Why did he do that if he knew that she was already married, that there's going to be potential retribution, and that she's probably going to be miserable as well? A lot of things stacked up against this decision.
Yeah, well, but it's also that the status of the woman is incredibly important, right? And that status lends itself to the man's lineage, right? And this is what you see throughout Mongol society, is that they are really keen to marry women of high status. And so in that early period where they're still sort of trying to establish themselves as a proper high status lineage, that's important, right? To have a high status woman by your side, and your children will their lineage will be sort of more elevated because of that. So you do see that happening, and yeah, it goes on, right? It goes on later, and you have the issue with Börte, this sort of issue in reverse, because when the Merkit come and take revenge for this earlier moment.
Börte is Genghis Khan's wife.
Yes,
First
and
wife.
she is so the Merkit, in revenge for Yisuge taking Hö'elün. The names are a bit tricky sometimes, but if in revenge for this, they come later and they take Temujin's wife Börte, and this leads to issues because Temujin's oldest son Jochi is born shortly after this abduction, right? So there's an assumption, or perhaps a story going around that Jochi was not actually Temujin's son. That he was a descendant of the Merkit. And this ends up being played out later in the decision who should succeed Temujin. And Jochi's other brother, Chagatai, calls him a bastard of the Merkit, right? And so this does cause problems for the family generally.
Hey, thank you for listening. First and foremost, a massive, massive thank you to my producers, Lorenzo, Jurechuk, Carmen, Veronica, Mila, and Taichi. You legends rock. Without you, this podcast would not have been possible at all. Thank you so much. For the rest of you, if you enjoyed listening to the episode, please follow and subscribe on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and YouTube. And of course, if you'd like to become a patron as well, go to Patreon, type Smart Cookies in there, and become one. All right. Thanks a lot. Bye-bye.